Thank you very much for being with me, dear students, tonight. I think that I was waiting for the rest of your classmates to get into because we have to practice, and if they are not present when the practices begin, they are going to be lost during the class. So, but I think that as it is so late, we're going to start. Okay. Thank you very much for being with me early. So let's go. Okay. Yesterday we had finished the listening section, that is to say, all the theoretical notes and commentaries on how to approach this section. And we had also started to practice for this section, right? If you remind. So today we're going to continue doing that. And we're going to do it with the same mechanism than yesterday. Okay, so let me share my screen with you. And here I have already prepared the class, okay, or in this case, the materials for the class. Okay, so please, Laura, Jessica, grab a piece of paper with you. Also, please grab a pencil or something to write with, and we're going to start listening, okay? So reminder, you have to take your notes, and then we're going to be taking turns in order to respond to the questions, having always 1 minute, as you know that the questions in the actual exam just give you 1 minute in order to read and to respond the question, okay? So please begin listening now.
Listen to part of a lecture in an anthropology class.
So we've been discussing 16th century Native American life, and today we're going to focus on the Iroquois and Huron peoples. They lived in the northeastern Great Lakes region of North America. Now, back then...
Okay, I think that Miguel has just gotten into, so let's do it again so that he can listen as well. Okay, Miguel, thank you very much for being with us. We're about to start with our practices, okay? So please grab your piece of paper, your pencil, and we're going to listen and then respond just as we did yesterday, okay? Sharing again my screen so you can all see it. And now please, of course, let's listen, okay? Let's go.
Listen to part of a lecture in an anthropology class.
So we've been discussing 16th century Native American life, and today we're going to focus on the Iroquois and Huron peoples. They lived in the northeastern Great Lakes region of North America. Now, back then, their lives depended on the natural resources of the forest, especially the birch tree. The birch tree can grow in many different types of soils and is prevalent in that area. Now, can anyone here describe a birch tree?
They're tall and white. The bark, I mean.
Yes, the birch tree has white bark. And this tough, protective outer layer of the tree, this white bark, is waterproof. And this waterproof quality of the bark, it made it useful for making things like cooking containers, a variety of utensils. And if you peel birch bark in the winter, we call it the winter bark, another layer, a tougher inner layer of the tree, adheres to the bark, producing a stronger material. So the winter bark was used for larger utensils and containers.
I know people make utensils out of wood, but utensils out of tree bark?
Well, birch bark is pliable and very easy to bend. The Native Americans would cut the bark and fold it into any shape they needed, then secure it with cords until it dried. They could fold the bark into many shapes.
So if they cooked in bowls made of birch bark, wouldn't that make the food taste funny?
Oh, that's one of the great things about birch bark. The taste of the birch tree doesn't get transferred to the food, so it was perfect for cooking containers. But the most important use of the bark, by far, was the canoe. Since the northeast region of North America it's interconnected by many streams and waterways, water transportation by vessels like a canoe was most essential. The paths through the woods were often overgrown, so water travel was much faster. And here's what the Native Americans did. They would peel large sheets of bark from the tree to form lightweight yet sturdy canoes. The bark was stretched over frames made from tree branches, stitched together, and sealed with resin. You know, that sticky liquid that comes out of the tree? And when it dries, it's watertight. One great thing about these birch bark canoes was they could carry a large amount of cargo. For example, a canoe weighing about 50 pounds could carry up to 9 people and 250 pounds of cargo.
Wow. But how far could they travel that way?
Well, like I said, the northeastern region is interconnected by rivers and streams and the ocean at the coast. The canoes allowed them to travel over a vast area that today would take a few hours to fly over. You see, the Native Americans made canoes of all types for travel on small streams or on large open ocean waters. For small streams, they made narrow, maneuverable boats, while larger canoes were needed for the ocean. They could travel throughout the area, only occasionally having to portage to carry the canoe over land a short distance to another nearby stream. And since the canoes were so light, this wasn't a difficult task. Now, how do you think this affected their lives?
Well, if they could travel so easily over such a large area, they could trade with people from other areas, which I guess would lead them to form alliances.
Exactly. Having an efficient means of transportation, well, that helped the Iroquois to form a federation linked by natural waterways. And this federation expanded from what is now southern Canada all the way south to the Delaware River. And this efficiency of the birch bark canoe also made an impression on newcomers to the area. French traders in the 17th century modeled they adopted the design of the Iroquois birch bark canoes, and they found they could travel great distances, more than 1,500 kilometers a month. Now, besides the bark, Native Americans also used the wood of the birch tree. The young trees were used as supports for lodgings, with the waterproof bark used as roofing. Branches were folded into snowshoes, and the Native American people were all adept at running very fast over the snow in these birch branch snowshoes, which, if you've ever tried walking in snowshoes, you know isn't easy.
Wonderful. Okay, so now that we have listened to that interesting lecture on this Native American people, let's just respond just as we did last class, okay? Every single one of you, by turns, is going to respond to one of these questions, okay? And just as we did yesterday, you're going to have just 1 minute to respond, because that is exactly the same time for you to respond in the actual exam, okay? Cada uno va a tener 1 minuto para responder, tal como en el examen, okay? The first person, the first classmate to respond is going to be Laura. So please, Laura, this is for you. You're going to have 1 minute, but you can respond whenever you want, okay?
It's a zero one.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Okay, Jessica, next is going to be for you. Start, please.
First option, teacher.
Okay, remember this, in this case, you have to choose 2 answers, so it will be the third, and which other one?
three options.
Okay, yeah, but remind that in this case, you have to choose two. En este caso hay que elegir dos. So, I understand, okay, the third one, and which other one? ¿Cuál otra más? The third and,
Option 1 and option 3.
okay, thank you very much, Jessica. Just on time, very good. First one, and this is one. Okay, thank you very much. Next. Okay, Miguel, this is yours.
I think it's the first one and the fourth one, teacher.
Okay, thank you very much, Miguel. Third one and fourth. Okay, very good.
The
So-
first one, teacher.
Oh, the first one. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Wonderful. Let's go. Okay, so now Laura, your turn again.
The third one. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Mm. Okay, thank you very much. So now, Jessica, this is yours again. Start this again. Oh, you have to listen to this.
Why does the student say this?
I know people make utensils out of wood, but utensils out of tree bark?
Right, so now please respond.
Second,
Okay, thank you very much. And Miguel, the last one is for you. Oh, okay. All of them have been responded. Okay, so let's view the results. That doesn't matter. Oh no, let's continue with another one.
Listen to part of a lecture in an anthropology
Another
class.
recent one, okay?
So we've been discussing 16th century Native American
This is one,
life.
doesn't matter. So let's go with another one, and later we're going to come back to the responses, okay? Okay, so please grab your piece of paper again, and also your markers or pencils. Let's go with another one.
Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class. So, continuing our discussions of environmental adaptation, today I want to focus on a species of fish called the notothenioids. Bit of a mouthful, I know. Scientists have documented over 90 species of notothenioids in both deep and shallow waters.
Oh, I was saying that Paola just got into, so let's start again. So also she's able to listen. We are practicing right now for the listening section, Paola. So please grab your piece of paper and also a pencil. And we're going to listen to a lecture on an academic topic. And what you have to do is to take your notes in order to respond with your classmates later, okay? So please, let's start again. Let's go.
Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class. So, continuing our discussions of environmental adaptation, today I want to focus on a species of fish called the notothenioids. Bit of a mouthful, I know. Scientists have documented over 90 species of notothenioids in both deep and shallow waters. You're getting creeped out by the PowerPoint slide, don't worry. They really only live around Antarctica. Most of them are pretty small. However, a few species can weigh up to 150 kilograms. These fish can be identified by their huge eyes, insulated with a layer of thick, transparent protective tissue. This kind of tissue protects the fluid in their eyeballs from freezing in the incredibly cold seawater. Remember, salt water has a lower freezing point than freshwater, so moisture in an animal's tissue would be particularly vulnerable to freezing and causing cell death. So while the cold ocean of Antarctica could freeze and kill most fish, the notothenioids end up thriving in these icy waters. They actually make up nearly 95% of all fish species in the Southern Ocean around that cold continent. That kind of thing is a stark contrast to tropical oceans where the biodiversity is extremely high. When you think of a tropical reef, for instance, you probably imagine a plethora of different types of fish and sea creatures living together and preying on each other. The average coral reef supports over 4,000 types of fish, sponges, crustaceans, and others. To have one species of fish in an entire section of the ocean? Pretty impressive. Yes, Amy?
How or when did the notothenioids end up taking over the Southern Ocean?
Well, I'm glad you asked. That was actually my next point of interest. So, about 30 million years ago, the water in that area was a lot warmer than it is today. Way back then, South America and Antarctica were actually connected. The air from around the equator could travel south to heat up the chilly Antarctic waters. The warm tropical waters could also flow southwards, bringing the rich biodiversity along with it. Because Antarctica's waters were relatively warm back then, it could support a lot of different types of animals. We confirmed this by looking at the fossil record, even finding out that 90 or so of the notothenioids even existed back then. Historians think that somewhere between 5 and 14 million years ago, two huge changes occurred. First of all, a chance mutation allowed the notothenioids to develop a special protein that now flows through their body. This special protein is actually a type of antifreeze. It works by bonding to an ice crystal that formed inside their flesh, preventing it from growing any larger. So, at the time, the waters they swam in were still decently warm, and the protein didn't do much for their overall survival rates. Still, somewhere around this time period, there are records of a colossal shift that moved around the Earth's tectonic plates. This movement is now known as continental drift. It pushed Antarctica away from South America and down toward the chilly southern end of the Earth. This caused a current to swirl up and form, encircling the cooling continent with a rush of cold water. This cold water prevented warmer tides from intermingling. It eventually dropped to the sub-zero icy landscape we know today. As you may have guessed, the tropical fish didn't do so well in the sudden drop of environmental temperatures, and many species went extinct. Luckily for the notothenioids, they had a handy-dandy gene mutation that let them produce this antifreeze protein. Now the only type of fish that could survive the cold waters, it had virtually no competition for food or resources and went wild. So, as its population increased dramatically, they migrated into different parts of oceans. Over time, they developed different physical adaptations to survive in their particular environment. Eventually, they split off into subspecies, mutated a bit more, had a bit of geologic morphology going on. Very cool stuff. We call this kind of physical differentiation process of adaptive radiation. It really only happens when a species rapidly changes and ends up with quite a few new species to fill empty niches that either didn't exist before or weren't available. So now we have about 90 species of notothenioids kicking it in the Southern Ocean.
Very funny, Professor, right? Okay, let's go. So, Laura, again, you're going to be the first one responding. So please start now. You have 1 minute to respond to this one.
I think number one.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Okay, Jessica, this is yours. Let's start this again.
For option.
Fourth option? Yes, or third?
Yes, yes, teacher.
Okay. Okay. So Paola, this is going to be for for you. You have 1 minute to respond. You can use the entire minute if you want, or if you manage to find a response before the minute ends, you can sell it. You can say it, okay?
Option number one.
Okay. Thank you very much, Paola. Let's go. Miguel Angel, just on time. Miguel Angel, this is yours.
The second one, teacher.
Okay, thank you very much, Miguel. Okay, and finally, this is going to be for Laura. Laura, this is yours again.
Third one, teacher.
Okay. Thank you very much, Laura. Well, there is one more. So, Jessica, this is yours again.
First one, teacher.
Okay. First, wonderful. Thank you very much. I think that's all. Yes. This doesn't matter. Okay.
Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class. So,
Okay, so we're going to have some feedback.
this before or weren't available. So now we have about
Exactly.
90 species of notothenioids kicking it in the Southern Ocean.
So I'm going to tell you what are the correct responses, okay? And I'm going to tell you why as well. So for example, this one. What is the lecture mainly about? Okay. We have here some, if you remind, this is the first type of question I taught you about, which is the main idea question. Esta es la pregunta que es la idea central, ¿no? So as I told you, this is always going to be the first question in all your series of questions. Siempre va a ser la primera pregunta en la serie de preguntas que van a tener, all right? So in this case, it says, what is the lecture mainly about? All right, so we have some options. How nothenioids, okay, difficult thing to pronounce, became the dominant type of fish in the Southern Ocean, okay? In the Southern Ocean, excuse me, yes, in the Southern Ocean, in this case, not Asian. So how barriers proteins function in nonothenioids, or however it's pronounced, an example that contradicts the theory of adaptive radiation, and for changes in ocean habitats caused by continental drift. Okay, so in this case, for example, the first one, how the notothenioids became dominant type of fish in the Southern Ocean. Wouldn't necessarily be the correct one, but in this case, the correct one would be the fourth one. En este caso, la correcta sería la 4. Because if you pay attention to this, actually the reason why the professor mentions these fishes, okay, which are very difficult to pronounce, it's because he comments on the different effects that some phenomena cause into different continents. In this case, what the continents undergone through the time in which some freezing began to take place and in which some other phenomena began to happen is the main idea, okay? Because actually the first one, how this fishes became a dominant type of fish in Southern Asia, or in the Southern Ocean, excuse me, it's just a little topic because the Southern Oceans are not always mentioned in the topic. But if you pay attention, the reason why the professor mentions this Southern Oceans, it's because he wants to somehow let them know that these fishes have advanced toward other environments. La razón por la que el profesor les menciona por qué es que estos peces, mejor dicho, por qué les menciona las aguas del sur, es porque les quiere enseñar por qué o cómo es que estos peces llegaron a otros ambientes, ¿verdad? But that is not the main idea of the entire topic or of the entire lecture, because in this case, the main idea is remind what surrounds and what is de alguna forma lo que está encerrando, framing everything, okay? Lo que está encerrando y remarcando todas las cosas. And that particular topic is changes in oceans habitats caused by continental drift, okay? Aquí, como les digo, la respuesta correcta es la 4 porque este es el tema que encierra todo. That is to say, the changes in some oceans that have caused continental drift, okay? This will be the correct answer here. All right. Let's continue. Next one. Why did the antifreeze protein originally give no special advantage to the earliest nonothenioids? Okay, ¿por qué es que la proteína antifreeze originalmente no les dio muchas ventajas a estos peces? All right, and we have some options here. Many other types of fish had the same protein. The nonothenioids were not living in sub-freezing temperatures. The effect of the antifreeze protein was neutralized by other proteins, or the antifreeze protein functioned only in the smallest nonothenioids. In this case, the correct answer is B, or the option number 2. The nonothenioids were not living in sub-freezing temperatures. Esta es una pregunta factual o de detalle. If you remind, I talked to you about this. There are some questions that are the normal questions that we receive in South America or Central America. That is to say, those questions that simply asks us about a specific information of the material we have received. For example, those questions when we're in high school, right? When the professor says, okay, read from page 20 to page 30. And later in the exam, we receive, okay, in page 23, it talks about, let's say, Darwin's evolutionary theory. So the professor asks you, okay, what is the mechanism of the proposed evolutionary theory, right? Simplemente nos pregunta cosas específicas. And in this case, there was a part in the lecture when the professor mentioned that the reason why this particular protein was not working for these species before the Antarctica became isolated, la razón por la que esta proteína no funcionó para los peces antes de que la Antártica se quede sola, no, o sea, when it was not connected with South America or with the South Oceans, was because they were not living in sub-freezing temperatures, ¿no? La razón era porque no estaban viviendo todavía en aguas frías. But when the time arrived, when these fishes were forced to live in these sub-freezing temperatures, then the protein worked, ¿no? Cuando ellos fueron forzados a vivir en estas aguas muy frías, la proteína recién se activó en ese momento, okay? So that's the reason why the option number 2 here is the correct one, okay? The non-thenioids were not living in sub-freezing temperatures, okay? Let's go with another one. What characteristic of non-thenioids helps them survive in sub-freezing temperatures? Okay, ¿qué características de estos peces los ayudan a sobrevivir en temperaturas de frío? So they maintain an unusually high body temperature, okay? Second option, a special tissue in their eyes enables them to see through ice. 3, a special proteins make their blood circulate too fast to freeze. Or option D, ice crystals in their bodies are prevented from growing large enough to harm them, okay? So, for example, the first response, could this be the correct one? They maintain an unusually high body temperature. In this case, it is not the correct answer because it is never mentioned in the passage itself that they had a high temperature body. What it is mentioned is that they had a special mechanism that prevented them from freezing or from freezing. Lo que dice es de que no es que tuvieron una sangre caliente, sino que había algo especial en sus cuerpos que los prevenía de que se congelen. That is what the lecture says. So the first option is not correct because it's confusing information. It never said that they had warm body or a warm blood, but that they had a mechanism that prevented them from freezing. That was the data or the information there. B, for example, a special tissue in your eyes enables them to see through ice. Well, obviously that was not mentioned, of course, and it's physically impossible, right? Well, to see through matter, ver entre materia. Well, we know that, but of course, the reason why this is not correct is because it was not mentioned in the passage, okay? La razón por la que no es correcta es porque no se mencionó en el pasaje. Even if we know, okay, externally that this is not possible, we shouldn't use that knowledge as a reason for not choosing this option. Incluso si nosotros sabemos externamente, es decir, con nuestro conocimiento propio, que obviamente no se puede ver entre materia, ¿no? Porque la definición de materia es algo que está unido, ¿verdad? Es decir, no se puede ver entre ellos. No deberíamos usar ese conocimiento para responder. Because imagine, for example, the hypothetical case in which the material here in ETS does say that this is possible. Imagínense que el material que escuchamos dice que esto sí es posible. So if they say it is possible, they are going to ask you according to their own knowledge, right? ETS les va a preguntar sobre lo que ellos dicen. Así que, if they are saying something that is scientifically incorrect, sadly, you're going to have to respond that way. Si ellos dicen algo que es científicamente incorrecto, que ustedes saben que no está bien, pero aún así se lo presentan de esa forma, aún así vayan por esa respuesta. Si es que eso es lo que mencionó el pasaje, okay? So the reason right now why we are not choosing this second option is not because this is not physically possible. No es porque esto no sea capaz físicamente, que no es físicamente posible, sino que la razón por la que no estamos eligiendo esta opción es porque no se mencionó en el pasaje, ¿okay? Que siempre sea esa la razón, that it was not mentioned in the lecture. 3, for example, special proteins make their blood circulate too fast to freeze. This is half true, okay? This is not the correct answer either, because they somehow, as I said, have a mechanism in your blood, in your bodies, that prevent them from freezing. Tienen un mecanismo en su cuerpo que los previene de congelarse. But it never said that it was because their blood circulated too fast. No dijo que ese mecanismo era que su sangre circulaba rápido. So this is confusing information. As I say, many times ETS is going to try to confuse you. And how are they going to try to do that? Well, by linking information incorrectly. Es decir, ellos unen información incorrectamente, la confunden. So this is not the correct answer. The correct answer here is ice crystals in their bodies are prevented from growing large enough to harden. There was a part in the lecture when the professor said that because of this protein that they have, these ice crystals in their bodies do not grow large enough in order to hurt them, but arriving at a particular point, the growing process of these ice crystals stops, and that is the reason why they don't die when other fishes die, because they freeze. Hay una parte en la lectura que el profesor dice que gracias a este gen, esta mutación que tienen ellos, los cristales en su cuerpo crecen hasta cierto punto y ahí se quedan. But in other fishes, what happens is that these ice crystals do grow up too much, and that is the reason why they freeze and die. Okay, so this is the correct answer, although it is not using the same words that were mentioned in the lecture. Esta es la respuesta correcta, incluso cuando no está mencionando las mismas palabras que en la lectura. That's the reason why I told you, right? If it is not using the same words, it doesn't mean that it's not the correct answer. Si no está usando las mismas palabras, no significa que sí o sí sea la respuesta incorrecta. What you have to look for in this type of questions is that it conveys exactly the same information present in the lecture. Lo que tienen que buscar en estas preguntas es que tenga la misma información que en la clase. Not with the same words, that can vary. No con las mismas palabras, eso puede variar. But the information, the fact must be equal, I'm sorry. El hecho que se les presentó tiene que ser igual, y este es el hecho que se presentó. Esta es la información. The ice crystals in their bodies are prevented from growing large enough to harm them. Okay? So that would be the correct answer. Next. Why does the professor mention that coral reefs support more than 4,000 species of fish? Okay? ¿Por qué es que el profesor dice que los corales, ¿no? Que las colinas de coral, o que los arrecifes, mejor dicho, de coral, alojan más de 4,000 especies de peces? We have some options here to find out what students know about tropical fish. Okay. Second option, to contrast two types of ocean environments. Option 3, to imply that there may be species in the Southern Ocean that have not been discovered yet, or to imply that there may be fossil evidence of coral reefs in the Southern Ocean. In this case, the correct answer is to contrast two types of ocean environments. Okay. Because when the professor mentions this, okay, he's talking about how is it, for example, that in Antarctica, there's just one species that dominates the entire environment. Él, cuando habla de este tema, lo habla en el contexto de que hay una sola especie en Antártica de que domina todo el ambiente. And that species is the nanothenioids, no? This fish that is super difficult to pronounce. It is that type of species that dominates that area. And I think he mentioned something like 95% or life in that particular water is from that species, que el 95% de vida en ese tipo de agua es de esa especie específica. But nonetheless, he says, when we come to the coral reefs in the southern oceans, there are a lot of species, more than 4,000 species of fish. Él dice de que cuando vamos a las aguas del sur, hay más de 4,000 especies de pez. So what he's trying to do when he makes this, when he includes this information, by the way, what this type of question, if you recognize it, is the function type of question. Esta es la pregunta de por propósito, ¿no? Es la que nos pregunta por qué. Why does the professor say this? He must have a reason, right? And the reason in this case, because of the context as we learn how to respond this, is that he is trying to make a comparison. Here, in these waters, just one species is the dominant one. But in these other waters, we have a great variety. And later he continues and looks for words to explain why this phenomenon is like that, ¿no? Él dice de que aquí hay una sola especie, aquí hay muchísimas, y el resto de su clase es para explicar por qué. ¿Por qué aquí hay solamente una especie y aquí hay muchísimas, ¿no? Y la correcta sería esta, to contrast two types of ocean environments. 5, according to the professor, which factor led to the rapid distribution of the notothenoids throughout the Southern Ocean? ¿Qué factor llevó a la distribución rápida de estos peces entre las aguas del sur? First option, a genetic mutation occurred in the DNA of the earliest notothenoid. There was an increasing competition for food in temperate waters. C, Antarctica broke off and drifted away from the South American continent. Okay. Or the waters around Antarctica temporarily worn out. okay? So why did this particular fishes manage to distribute so rapidly throughout the Southern Ocean? Tenemos la pregunta de por qué se distribuyeron tan rápido estos peces en las aguas del sur. The first option says a genetic mutation occurred in the DNA of the earliest non-Atheniod, okay? Could be. B, there was an increasing competition for food in temperate waters. Okay, that is not the correct one. C, Antarctica broke up and drifted away from the South American continent. No, this is not the correct one. Or the waters around Antarctica temporarily warmed up. Okay. The correct answer here in this case, it's simply option. Okay, in this case, it's option C, definitely. It's option C, or the third option. Because if you pay attention to the end of the lecture, the professor mentioned that at some point, some years ago, Antarctica, although was isolated from South America, later it allowed for these fishes to come back to South America, where they had previously lived. Al final de la clase, el profesor dijo de que a pesar de que Antártica se separó de Sudamérica, que así fue, dice de que en un momento permitió que estos peces vuelvan nuevamente a las aguas en donde ellos habían vivido antes, ¿no? Because we are said at the beginning of the lecture that these fishes already lived in South America before it was disconnected from Antarctica, because at the middle, I think, of the lecture, he mentions that Antarctica was separated from South America, and that's the reason why Antarctica became so cold, when before that or previous that particular time, it was not that cold, but it was mixed with the warm waters of South America, no? So the reason here is that, as I say, Antarctica at some point allowed these fishes to move on to South America again. So the reason, la razón por la que se distribuyeron tan rápido en Sudamérica es porque Antártica les dio la oportunidad nuevamente de volver al continente. Because in this case, for example, the first option, a genetic mutation occurred in the DNA of the earliest non-Atheniod. This is the reason why they thrived in Antarctica, not in South America. Esta primera opción es la razón por la que ellos prosperaron en Antártica, no en Sudamérica o en las aguas del sur. ¿Por qué? Because the reason why this DNA change helped them to survive in Antarctica was because the change in their DNA helped them to survive freezing waters, not hot waters. La razón por la que este gen les ayudó en Antártica era porque ayudaba a que ellos sobrevivan en aguas frías, no en aguas calientes. So that same gene wouldn't help them in South America or in South Ocean because it wouldn't help, okay? If it is just because, or if the only objective of this gene or DNA change is to help them to survive in freezing waters, well, it means, of course, that if they are moved towards warmer waters, they are not going to make use of it, ¿no? Si ellos se van a aguas más calientes, no lo van a usar porque solamente les permite vivir en aguas frías, ¿no? Entonces, no es la correcta, que es la única que más o menos podría tentar, ¿no? Could be tempting, because the other ones, of course, there was an increasing competition for food in temperate waters, never mentioned, and the other one as well, Antarctica was temporarily warmed up, is actually the opposite, right? We are told that Antarctica got cold. Se nos dice que Antártica se enfrió, no que se calentó, right? So the correct answer here is C, or option number 3. Final question. According to the professor, what happened to the nothonioids that migrated to different areas of the Southern Ocean? ¿Qué le pasó a estos peces que migraron a diferentes áreas del Océano del Sur? ¿No? We have here some options. It says they evolved into a wide variety of non-Atheniod species. They developed the ability to tolerate a wide range of temperatures. 3, some of them became extinct because of new predators, or some of them developed additional antifreeze proteins. ¿Qué le pasó a los peces cuando migraron a las aguas del sur, no? That is to say, the non-Atheniod. They evolved into a wide variety of non-Atheniod species. This is actually the correct option. Okay, la primera opción es la correcta. Why? Because at the end of the lecture, the professor says that there are more than 90 species of this particular one in South America right now. That when in Antarctica, we just have one species dominating the entire environment. When this particular species move on to South America or to the South waters, now we have 90% of this same species, or excuse me, 90 different species of this particular fish living in our waters. Se dice de que cuando se mudaron a las aguas del sur, donde vivimos nosotros, solamente la gente que vive en Sudamérica, ellos lograron expandirse a 90 especies. That is what he mentions at the end of the lecture. So here, of course, what happened when this species moved to South America or to the South Ocean? Well, of course, they evolved into a wide variety of nothonithioid species, okay? Evolucionaron en una gran variedad de especies de esta misma clase, all right? So this would be the correct answer here. For example, the second one wouldn't be, oh, Miguel, a question? Miguel, you have some question, Miguel?
No, teacher, I'm sorry. I just pressed wrong button.
Oh, no, it's fine. Okay, don't worry. So for example, here, the second option, they develop the ability to tolerate a wide range of temperatures is not correct either. Why? Because at the beginning of the lecture, we are said that this species already lived in warm temperatures. Se nos dice de que estos peces ya vivían en temperaturas calientes antes. So if they were able to live in this particular temperatures before, when they move on or came back to the same waters again, they did not develop a new ability. They just lived because they already had that particular gene, ¿no? Ellos ya tenían la habilidad de sobrevivir en aguas calientes, así que cuando volvieron, ¿qué pasó? Simplemente utilizaron esa habilidad que ya tenían, no adquirieron nada nuevo, ¿no? 3, some of them became extinct because of new predators, never mentioned. No, predators, actually the word predators is never mentioned in the lecture. Or finally, 4, some of them developed additional antifreeze proteins, not mentioned either. The only time in which these proteins are mentioned is at the middle of the lecture, when the professor talks about how said that this species developed a new particular protein that helped them in the future when Antarctica isolated from South America or from the South waters. Okay, that's the information there. Okay, any question about this? Any question about any particular type of questions that we can help to clarify maybe on how to respond to any of these types of questions? Anything? No, anything? All right, no questions there. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm going here to your WhatsApp group. I am pasting here to the WhatsApp group free resources that I have collected for you, okay, for you to practice this section at home whenever you have time, whenever you want to do it, okay? And of course, it is going to help you to improve, okay? And as you know, you can send me a message through WhatsApp whenever you want. I am going to upgrade this. Tomorrow, I'm going to send you another list of free resources. You can use this one for today or for the weekend, but I'm going to send more of these resources, free resources for you to practice, okay? Because I want you to have the chance to go to the exam very well prepared. And one manner, I think, of doing so is by practicing a lot, okay? So please expect more of these free resources. I'm going to be sending them to the WhatsApp group. I hope tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, and you're going to be able to continue practicing, okay? So I'm going to stop sharing this, and please don't go. I have to take your assistance. And please help me as well with the traditional poll, okay? Por favor, ayúdenme mientras tanto con la encuesta diaria. Me ayudarían muchísimo, okay? So, please listen to your name as well. ¿Hay alguna pregunta igual? Any question while we are filling here the assistance list? Anything I can help you with? Okay. Estudiantes. Okay, right here. So it's here present, for example, Claudia Guzman, Patricia. Okay, no, it's not here. Mamani Laura, Leticia.
Present, teacher.
Thank you very much, Laura. What about Álvaro Chayapa? I think he got just for a second, then leave. Okay. Jessica Gutierrez.
Present, teacher.
Thank you very much, Jessica. What about Miguel Ángel Silva?
Present, teacher. Yes, I'm
Thank you
here.
very much. Thank you very much, Miguel. And finally, here, it's here, Marlena Natalia. Marlena Molinigo, Natalia. Okay, what about Cerruto, Natalia Fernanda? Okay, Sebastián Emilia. Okay, y Paola Alejandra.
Present, teacher.
Thank you very much, Paola. There we are. Okay, so please, if you have any questions throughout the week, tell me, and thank you very much for your responses, okay? See you next week, and please expect those free resources very, very soon, okay? Thank you very much, and have a wonderful night.
Bye, teacher.
Bye-bye, see you. Thank
Bye,
you very
teacher.
much, bye-bye.